Hi, my name is Walt Hayes. I'm a retired lawyer and a volunteer environmental activist. My wife and I moved to Palo Alto in 1976. Before that, we lived in San Jose, where I served one term on the San Jose City Council. I'm here in support of Measure D. I can think of three main reasons why the voters should support it. Number one, I think it would be more democratic to have 7 councilmen rather than 9. Number two, I think it would be easier on a working person to serve if there are only 7. And number three, be much more in line with other cities in the area. So let me just take those one at a time. It would be more democratic. Now, anyone who's actually experienced a Palo Alto City Council meeting knows that they go on a very long time, and it's understandable why they do. If a person wants to run for a city council, it's because they want to make the city a better place, and they have strong ideas about how to do that. So they don't get elected to be quiet. So what happens is, on every issue, every councilman feels that they have to say something about it. And the result of that is that the meetings go on and on and on, often past midnight into the early morning hours. There is nothing that does more to discourage citizen participation than having to sit through a meeting like that. And in my mind, citizen participation is the definition of democracy. Now, the opponents have ideas about how that can be easily corrected. They say it can be done with a carefully crafted agenda. Well, having served on a city council, I know that agendas are dictated by events, which are often urgent. And if you have an urgent issue, you can't dismiss it by not putting it on the agenda. More importantly, when they say the other solution would be to require council people to be concise, now that is really a joke. I mean, the mayor has no power to do that. If the mayor tried to shut people up, it would just generate animosity. That is a complete fallacy. So as long as you're going to have 9 council people, you're going to have 9 people speaking on every issue, and you're going to be stuck with long meetings and bad citizen participation. And the second point is that I think 7 would be easier for an ordinary person to be on the council. The opponents say, well, if you only have 7, there's so many duties and regional committees and so forth that only a person who's independently wealthy or retired could serve. But just take a look at how this works. If you have 9 people on the council and the meeting goes until 2 o'clock in the morning, someone who's independently wealthy can sleep in the next day. But a person who has to work is going to have to get up early and go to work. So it's definitely easier on the working person. Then lastly, 7 council people would be much more in line with other cities. That Palo Alto, for example, has 6, well, first of all, the argument that opponents give is that Palo Alto is special because it has its own utilities and it has to deal with Stanford. The city of Santa Clara has double our population. They have their own utilities. They have to deal with the Levi Stadium, and they only have 7 people. There are also, the following cities have much more population than we do, like Palo Alto has 64,000. Mountain View, Redwood has 74,000. Redwood City has 79,000. Sunnyvale has 140,000, and they all have 7 council people. So why are we different? San Mateo has 99,000 and only has 5. And lastly, I guess I would say, in San Jose, I served on the council for 4 years, in 1969 to 73. There were 600,000 people in San Jose, and there were only 7 council people. So if you look at, and then actually in California, the general law is that every city that doesn't have its own charter is only allowed 5. So there's no reason that Palo Alto has to be so special, particularly with these other disadvantages. So I'm urging everybody to vote yes on Measure D for all these reasons.
Hi, I'm Tom Du Bois, candidate for City Council, and I'm against Measure D, which reduces council representation from 9 seats to 7. There are many important reasons to keep our council at its current size and few reasons to reduce it. And the first reason is really so important that it outweighs all other arguments for or against. That reason is democratic representation. Having more city council seats allows our highly educated, informed, and engaged citizenry to have more of a voice, to have more diverse viewpoints, and to enable a broader range of people to participate in our local city government. Fewer representatives concentrates power in the hands of fewer people. Our democratic system relies on checks and balances, one of the most important being representation of the people. So Menlo Park and Mountain View have smaller councils. Why shouldn't Palo Alto? First, Palo Alto is a complex city for its size and has many services not commonly found in similarly sized cities. We run our own utilities, we have our own airport and golf course, and our workday population more than doubles during the daytime. Parts of Stanford are in the city limits, and the whole campus is really part of the official sphere of influence. Secondly, our city council is basically a volunteer organization. Because council members sit on many regional and state committees, among them the Midpeninsula Open Space District, the Santa Clara VTA, Stanford Liaison Committee, Association of Bay Area Governments, Santa Clara Water District, Northern California Power Agency, the list goes on and on. Having 9 council members spreads that workload and makes it possible for more residents to participate while still holding down a job. It also allows Palo Alto to have active representation in areas that impact us regionally. Third, our council used to be 15 seats and was already reduced to 9. With further reduction, because of the workload demands, only professional politicians will be able to serve, those that are independently wealthy, retired, or have strong motivations, such as representing a special interest that needs city government approvals. Residents have diverse views and are often less organized. Fewer seats leads to less focus on residential priorities. We have a history in Palo Alto of citizen engagement, and we need to continue to encourage that. I'm a good example. I'm running for council because I'm concerned about the quality and pace of commercial development in town. I'm also a father with 2 teenagers and a full-time job. I'm running as a citizen representative with a desire to serve the public, and I don't think it'd be possible for someone like me to run with a 7-person council. It's instructive to look at how this measure got on the ballot in the first place. Several items were proposed together: eliminating term limits, paying council members more, and reducing seats. There were discussions about all of these taking place immediately so that many of the current council members could remain in place. And luckily, our city attorney said that such measures could not be implemented immediately after the election, and the term limit proposal was voted down. This proposal for reducing the number of seats only passed by a 5-4 vote, and several of the council members who voted for it said they really weren't passionate about it one way or the other. So the question is, why is this even on the ballot? Who's pushing for it? What are their motivations? It's been proposed before and it's been defeated. Former Mayor Vic Ajakian stood up in council chambers the other night and said this very thing, calling it a solution in search of a problem. The biggest argument for it is that council meetings are too long, and I suggest we correct that by conducting meetings more efficiently. We need the council to elect mayors that are skilled at running meetings and know what they're doing. Too often, council members talk far longer than necessary. Reducing the council from 9 to 7 is a 22% reduction. Perhaps 22% of those words spoken were unnecessary, and if so, we could expect to have meetings to be 22% shorter. Yet in practice, when a city council member is absent, the meetings are not shorter. And neighboring cities with smaller councils still meet past midnight. So seat reduction does not guarantee shorter meetings. Experienced leadership that expect attendees to come prepared and values concision and preparation can create efficiency. There are 4 candidates running for city council that have taken an active role in opposing this idea of cutting your representation on council: Eric Filseth, Lydia Koo, Karen Holman, and myself. So please join me in standing up for your voice and your representation. Vote no on Measure D, cast a vote for making residents the top priority for the city, and I hope you also elect me to represent you on City Council. Thank you.
I'm Greg Schmidt, a 7-year member of the Palo Alto City Council. This election is about active participatory democracy. Keeping 9 council members means that citizens have more opportunities to engage with government officials on decisions that are important to them. The argument has been made that 7-member council is more democratic because of the long time spent in meetings. Actually, meetings are open to the public And over the summer months in Palo Alto, there have been an average of 26 public speakers at each meeting. This indicates that the public sees the meetings as accessible to them on issues of concern. The agendas are usually driven in such a way that important public issues come early in the process. The point has been made that it's easier to serve when meetings are shorter. We're in the midst of an election campaign right now, and there are 12 candidates vying for 5 seats. Over the last 14 years, for example, there have been an average of 2.5 candidates for each available seat. This does not indicate that there's a shortage of quality, diverse candidates who want to serve on the council. It is also important to note that it's not the council meetings alone that are the issue. It's the out-of-council activities, serving on regional bodies. I spent 3 hours this morning on the Grand Boulevard Initiative group, talking to constituents, meeting with people, meeting with neighborhood groups. Those are things that take time and effort. And yet, again, there are 2.5 candidates for each available seat. People are willing, able, and happy to take on the burden for the rewards that come with it. A major point has been made that we're out of line with our neighbors. Actually, if you look at the cities of Santa Clara County, take San Jose out, which has 1 council member for each 100,000 population. All other Santa Clara cities average 1 council member for 7,900 population. Our ratio is 1 per 7,400, a little better than county average, but not out of line. If we went down to 7 council members, the ratio would be 1 council member for 9,500. Academic and legal scholars say that active participatory democracy works best in cities the size of Palo Alto. Having a spectrum of voices on the council helps you find a voice or an ear for an issue of importance to you. De Tocqueville said, widespread participation in local government is the essential strength of American democracy. Reducing council size limits the representation of a broad spectrum of public interest. Why cut back something that is so valuable to all of us? Vote no on D. Thank you.
This election is really kind of a contest between theory and reality. I think one of the most important arguments in favor of Measure D is the number of council people and other legislators who've actually sat through long meetings with 9 council people and have fervently endorsed this measure. So let me just tell you some of the people representing all different points of view and political backgrounds and so forth who've endorsed this. Betsy Bechtel, Mike Cobb, Peter Dreckmeyer, Sid Espinosa, Judy Kleinberg, Liz Niss, Joe Simidian, Larry Klein. Former school board members, John Barton, Julie Jerome, Kathy Kroyman, Susie Richardson. Other community leaders, there are many. Actually, we have 180 endorsers. I don't know if they have any other than the people that are actually speaking. Community leaders, Diana Diamond, who wrote a column on this the other day, Megan Sweezy Fogarty, John Foster, Iris Corral, Barbara Spring, and many others. And then our two Assembly people and Senate people, Rich Gordon and Jerry Hill. And then Joe Simidian has served, as you know, on the school board, the city council, in the board of supervisors, and in the state legislature, and he is solidly endorsed this measure as well. And the reason they've done it is because the arguments that the opponents make are they're great in theory, but they just don't, they don't work out in practice. There are a couple things I'd like to point out. One is that this measure is not going to benefit any particular council person. It's not going to go into effect until 2019. And then a comment that was made in the opening of the opposing argument was that this measure had been defeated before. It has never been presented to the voters. This is the first time, and I don't think it's going to be defeated. And then the more we get into the arguments, the more theoretical they get. Somehow or other, the opponents feel that Palo Alto is so special, you know, that we have to have more than anybody else. But I mean, every city has to have representation on regional committees and all that type of thing. And as I pointed out, Santa Clara has double the population, has their own utilities, has everything that Palo Alto has, plus twice as many people, and they get by just fine with 7 people. And then I think the biggest illusion of all is for Tom to say, well, you can solve the problem of long meetings just by having more efficiency. And it kind of goes like their ballot argument, just ask the council people to be more concise. Anyone who's ever sat through a council meeting and watched people drone on and on and on, often into the early hours of the morning, knows that you just aren't, that's a theory, that's a dream. You can't shut council people up, and in a way you can't blame them. They didn't get elected just to sit there like a bump on a log. They want to have their say. So actually, the question, both sides are claiming that their side is more democratic. I think the most important part of any democratic thing is that you have active citizen participation. And any citizen who goes to council meetings with 9 people is going to be very discouraged and unlikely to come back. With 7, you'd have a better chance of getting people to actually get down there and speak. And that's what you want, is citizen participation. So for all these reasons, and because, oh, and I'd say one more thing. One of our most beloved councilmen and mayors was Gary Fazzino. And his widow, Annette Fazzino, has specifically said that Gary, who has endured more long, lengthy, interminable council meetings than any other person in town, and is one of our most beloved representatives, was strongly in favor of this. So I think that you couldn't ask for a better argument in terms of someone who's actually lived through it and knows what it's like to sit through an interminable meeting. So for all these reasons, we ask you to vote for reality and not for theory, and that means supporting Measure D.